Welcome, welcome, welcome. I'm your host, Alex Gizis, and this is Speedify Live, the live stream about live streaming. So today we have a very special guest. We are going to find out how Dr. Carl Gold got started with his fighting churn journey. So before we start, give us a follow, like, subscribe, whatever it is the buttons underneath say. We're streaming lots of places. I can't tell you. If it's YouTube, don't forget you got to click that bell and turn on notifications. Otherwise, it won't tell you when we're going live. So if you have questions for Carl, you just ask them underneath and we'll make him answer them. So Dr. Carl Gold, he is the Director of Machine Learning and Implementation at OfferFit. He has a PhD from Caltech. He has lots of publications and things. The book we're most excited about here is his Fighting Churn with Data book that has been passed around this office. He also live streams. He codes, so you can watch him program. I'm actually in the audience. I have sat and just watched him program and learned a lot from it. So, final reminder: we are live. Just ask comments. We will make him answer. So let's bring Carl on. Hey,
Hey, Alex. Great to be
welcome
here.
It's great to have you. How have you been?
Very busy. I mean, my life, I'll admit, is pretty crazy. Since I joined my current company is a startup called OfferFit. As you mentioned, I'm a director there. And it's a lot of work being in a startup. We're a Series A startup. We're hoping to, get another round of funding later this year, but there's just a lot going on, and it's a really exciting technology too. So I'm having a lot of fun with it, and it's been a great next step for me because it's a real natural continuation of the work that I was doing about churn. But it's a lot of work, and my streaming has actually suffered for it. I'll be honest on that one too.
I have to be honest. When I read your book, I was like, it's so funny that he wrote this and published it and put out all the sample code on GitHub. Why didn't he start a company? Like,
Well, the truth is, I mean, the book resulted from two failed projects, one of which was an independent company. Before I was at Zora, I was at a smaller startup called Sparked. And they tried to put that kind of technology into a product and basically failed because of, well, a lot of challenges, mostly having to do with connecting a lot of different customers' data and munging it together. And then at Zora, which is the main experience that the book draws on, where I was the head of data science there for a number of years. The honest truth is they tried to make a separate product because they already had a main product. This was going to be like an add-on product for them. And they also tried it for a few years and rolled it back also because of the massive challenges of data pipeline work. Honestly, it wasn't really the data science that failed in both those companies, but it's hard to make all this data pipeline stuff work. Now I'm at another company where we're trying again. Well, they were already trying before I joined, but I joined to, add my experience to what they already had, going on. And we also have a lot of challenges like that as well. Just data pipelines are hard. So if you're a data pipeline engineer, you've got a great career ahead of you. What I think we have going for us at OfferFit this time is just the world has advanced, and more companies know that data pipelines are hard. There's a whole category of product called a CDP, or I don't know if you know that acronym. CDP is for Customer Data Platform, and it's supposed to combine all your data to make it easier to work with third-party vendors like these companies. And when I started at the first startup, number one, it was literally, I guess, 8 years ago or 9 years ago, and there was no such thing as a CDP. Like, no one realized yet, not many people realized that this was hard and needed a product to support it. So the world has just come a long way since I started working on Churn. So we're hoping that, OfferFit, the third startup, will be the charm for actually making a product that takes advantage of it. Now, why I didn't start my own startup after leaving Zora, that's like another story. I mean, starting startups is a lot of work. And let's just say I was happy to find someone else's startup that kind of aligned with my goals, so I didn't have to.
So you make me feel better because we haven't done nearly as much with your book as we would like to, because getting all the data, into your schema so that we can run the analysis. Well, we just thought it was our list for a personal failure. That, oh, we suck, we can't do it.
No, it's really hard. And a lot of companies, struggle with it. I mean, the number one barrier, I think, to taking advantage of data, I have to admit, it's not the data science, which is hard, but it's not what most companies have the most trouble with. Because, to really have a reliable data pipeline, there's just so many things that can go wrong. And they become very expensive projects because each little fix, it takes your IT team or a software developer, which is why CDP is a huge category. There's something like 100 different CDPs out there now. So it's actually bewildering. Hopefully some of those will stick.
That's right. So your live streams are kind of untraditional, right? I mean, I guess most people live streaming are gaming, and if they're not gaming, they're traveling around. But you're really sitting there programming.
Yeah. Well, there is a big category of programming streamers. You know that, right?
Yeah, sure.
I'm not the only data scientist, and I'm certainly not the most popular. I'm glad that you like my stream, but yeah, there are other data science live streams, and a lot of people code in live streams too. So I got turned on to it, honestly, by my publisher, the publisher of the book. They have their Manning Publications. They have their own Twitch channel, and they regularly have their authors, go on to it. And when they first asked me about it, I had the same reaction like you. I was like, I thought Twitch is gaming, and I was not even signed up to Twitch, so I only knew about Twitch. Again, dating myself, from my kids. I have kids who are the age that they watch they watch a lot of gaming on Twitch and YouTube. But so I thought it was only gaming until my publisher said, "Hey, do you want to do this with us?" Oh my God, Matty Two Shoes. See, he's another data streamer and a friend of mine. Glad to see you're watching this, Matty. But yeah, there are programming streams. I got turned on to it by my publisher. And the other thing that happened with me is this was right when COVID hit. My book was supposed to come out in like the spring of 2020. It was like the countdown to the book launch. I had a whole bunch of in-person conferences lined up where I was going to go on like a little tour, supporting the book, and everything got canceled, of course. And so that was when I was like, wow, maybe I should spend some more time. I did one live stream with a publisher, and then it was, okay, I can actually do more of this. And since I can't do anything, number one, I can't do anything else to support the book in the year that it was coming out. And number two, it's just a good thing to do from home. Because I'll be honest that before streaming, there were times when I traveled a long distance to present to a very small audience. Like once I traveled across the country to speak to a room of 12 people. And after that, I was like, oh my God, that's not really an efficient use of my time. But it's like you can get an audience that size from your own home. So it's like, why travel?
So how much prep do you do? I mean, some of the streams seem very much examples from your books.
Yeah, I'm pretty structured in what I do. Well, I've actually done both. I've done most of my streams that have ended up being structured, I'll be honest, because I didn't get as many viewers interested when I was doing kind of unstructured. A lot of programmers do something unstructured, like, hey, I'm just going to hack out some project. And I did streams like that, but I definitely had less interest from viewers. So I fell back to being more structured, where I would prepare a certain section of material from the book, and I try to come up with new examples that go beyond the book. So typically my best formula is to do like a live stream, which is 80% structured, and I just do examples from the book. And then at the end, I'll be like, okay, I'm going to do something new that wasn't in the book. And then I do like a live hack session where I really just kind of That's actually the most challenging, actually, because then
Yeah.
there's the pressure to get it right and like not look stupid with a stupid bug
Well,
on a live
you
stream.
seem so brilliant when, if I hadn't read the book, I'm like, wait, is this from the book again? Everything you do works.
Well, the
When you're
examples from the
following the
book always
structure.
work. The you should my least popular streams were probably the ones when I was converting the book into a Python package, and there's like so many little bugs, and like I can't believe anyone even like stayed on watching those streams when I was just like bug hunting and trying to get my package to work. So
Yeah, so Maddie is
Maddie
saying,
says he enjoys it, actually. Okay, thanks,
yeah,
Maddie. There's a vote of confidence.
the most authentic. Authenticity is important. Um, so how long have you been
Yeah.
working on Churn? I mean, it's been for sort of the last two jobs, or has it been kind of?
About 9 years now, actually. Not 100% on Churn, but the first Churn project was, yeah, my first startup. That not my startup, but I joined a startup where they hired me to work on Churn. That was about 9 years ago, and I spent a while there trying to, productize churn analyses. And then, yeah, I went, that startup sort of had they didn't immediately die. They had a near death experience, which I didn't stick around past the first near death experience. They later did completely die. But then I went to Zora and spent several years there working, again, not 100% on churn, but a lot. It was what I was hired to do. I was hired to work on these churn problems and really focused on it for a good couple of years. Again, I mentioned before, that product ran into difficulties of just the cost and complexity of handling customer data pipelines. So I got a little bit less focused on churn towards the end of my time, at Zora.
Right.
And then, yeah, but
So
I've kept
how long did
involved
you
in it.
actually spend writing the book? Like how big
That's
deal
a
is
good
that?
question. Let's see. It took about, I would think, 14 months from when I actually started, really writing it. I mean, there's a whole process before that, of course, of like getting a book deal and like writing, I had to write some, samples and do a lot of back and forth on that. But it took about, 14 months. And that was something I did in my free time. uh, like when not when I was like working on my job. So it was kind of like evenings, weekends. It was a long slog. Just ask my family.
Yeah. Not early mornings though, huh? Or
Not so much, but definitely, yeah, evenings, weekends. It takes a lot. Definitely, I underestimated the level of effort. Although I didn't do too bad. I mean, it was
no,
14
14 months is
months
not
and not
bad.
like 3 years or something. So,
Yeah,
yeah, it wasn't too
it's
bad.
quite a book for like I really recommend your book. Anyone who hasn't read it, who's doing anything in e-commerce, you should run out and get it. Privacy. So I feel like a lot of your stuff, you're talking about sucking in all the events of everything everyone does in order to analyze it. Now, GDPR and stuff, that seems like a lot of private data or potentially
Well,
private data.
actually, the good news is that the most private data is usually not that helpful for churn. Most of the
Okay.
data that we work with for churn can be completely anonymized. It should be completely anonymized. And it's kind of like this customer ID logged in at this time, this customer ID used such and such a feature. This customer ID used so many gigabytes of their data plan, and that can all be completely anonymous, and it should be. And PII, which is, well, of course, you never want to take PII in any form, but there's kind of borderline PII also, like location that that someone lives is kind of borderline PII, depends on how specifically. But the truth is, like, geographic, demographic data is usually the least useful for churn. Like many people naturally gravitate to that. Like, oh, maybe we're better in certain regions, or maybe we're better with certain demographics. Usually, as a data scientist, what I find is that if you have behavioral data, which again can be completely anonymized, it should be completely anonymized, and then you will put it in a model together with personal data, the personal data is always unimportant. It's all the
Right.
behavior really tells you if someone likes your service or not. Like, are they logging in? Are they using it? That's so fortunately for churn, the PII is less important and usually can be omitted. Sometimes it gives you a little extra. I'm not going to lie. Although you shouldn't be,
Mhm.
of course, using true PII, which is like, phone numbers and names. That's not useful for churn anyway. Like we don't need to know who you are to know if you're going to churn. We need to know
Right.
how much you're logging in and using, and possibly demographic data might help a little bit, but
All right. So Quiet Galaxy asks, so it's a misconception that companies need a consumer profile and a name to effectively sell.
hmm. Well, definitely to do predictive analytics about what someone's going to do, you generally need to track a user across multiple sessions, anonymously, of course, which implies, well, some kind of cookie, or if it's a free product, or login or sign up. Um, yeah, otherwise it is pretty hard to do predictive analytics if you don't know, because you need to track what people do and then later see what the outcome is as far as purchases or churn. Um, and I don't know about, again, well, you need a name or contact info to sell something, but to do predictive analytics, uh, you need to know something about people. And yeah, some people don't want to be predicted, which I can understand. Um, I generally set my cookies to allow usually it's like the performance cookies are the ones which track, like they call it, they give you the choice of cookies. It's like required, performance, targeting. I always turn off the targeting, but the performance cookies are usually the ones which collect that a lot anonymous data. User 123 initiated a download. User 123 did this, and it helps companies monitor the performance of different aspects of their service, of course. And it is what allows you to know that, oh, customer 123, came back. Customer 456, oh, they churned. And that's what allows you to
Yeah.
put all that data together.
All right. Maddie says customer ID and then merge with the actual customer data, put it back in your production system to personalize emails, etc. Right.
Yep, that's pretty much it is. And part of what OfferFit does is we have, of course, a big platform, to take care of those kind of complicated data ingestion. And when you're doing, in my book, we don't actually do reinforcement learning. I teach how to analyze churn, but not to actually use a machine learning algorithm to target people. But
Yeah.
all these problems get even harder with what OfferFit's doing, which is reinforcement learning, where you want to train an AI algorithm to actually predict the next best action for someone, which
I thought
needs,
I thought AI made everything easy.
well, it makes things possible, but the data pipeline is still hard. Like there's no AI that will make your data pipeline for you and just make it work. So it's a big part of every project still. Um, but like I said before, the world is getting better at this. Companies have it down more. OfferFit, companies like OfferFit have, better platforms to do all that stuff. So
Nice. So, just a reminder, so we are live here with the author of Fighting Churn, Dr. Carl Gold, and we are live. So, post questions and he's answering them. Um, so, let's talk about live streaming and your Twitch. So, how often do you stream these days?
it's fallen down to every month or every other month. Again, like since taking my role at OfferFit, it's been a hard 6 months. There's a ramp up. I am hoping to get back to more regular live streaming soon, partly because I've just gotten kind of up to speed, more comfortable in my role. I've also been developing new content because I actually didn't want to just like keep streaming the same stuff from my book. So I've been working on a bunch of new kind of examples, really creating new data sets. Because I mean, you mentioned, privacy, PII. Like for streaming, a big challenge is I never use real data, because there's a stream based on Manning Publications data, a series of streams based on their data, but they gave me the rights to that. Otherwise, I don't have the rights to stream
By
about
their
even.
data, you mean a list of books and
Yeah,
their content
well,
site.
Manning's data set consists of, well, anonymous IDs, of course, for all the customers, and then what books they bought, and then how often they came to the website, what they did on the website, and all that kind of stuff. Again, tracked by anonymous ID. So that was a data set that I spent a while doing streams on. But then after that, I did some extensions to the book, and I've been recently, again, working on developing new data sets, new examples to augment what was in the book. There are a bunch of stuff in the book actually where I wrote some code, I showed some code examples, but then there was no data to test it on. Like the book, as you know from reading it, is based around a simulated data set where you kind of go through each stage of analysis on this, fake generated data set. But it wasn't good enough to actually do everything that I wanted it to do. And I was in a real rush when I was writing the book. Well, I mean, it's complicated because one author I know who talked to me said, "Oh, your first book has to be perfect." And I was like, well, maybe that's if I'm a professional author. I actually saw my book as more like a minimum viable product, that term from the startup
Mhm.
space. It was kind of like an MVP book. It was like the minimum viable book. But I knew I was going to have to improve it, over time because it wouldn't really be what I wanted. So I've been doing that recently. And I haven't been live streaming it again. Now, maybe after Maddie's comments, I'll
So, do you
start.
think you're building towards a second book or a second edition?
Yeah, probably. I'm first going to be building towards a new live stream series, which I should be able to start this spring, which will go over, go through the new examples and new stuff. But yes, I have thought that if there is a second edition in a couple of years, I'm developing the material for it now. But it'll come on my live stream first. And yeah, I've been working on it. It's pretty close to me. All right, okay. So Maddie thinks I should just start streaming again with the live development. I'll see if I do that. But even either way, I'm going to be ready to do a new series soon based on new data, new examples and stuff. So
Yeah, there are a lot of books you can tell now. Started off as a series of blog posts, right? A lot of books you read and say, these were individually published. I can just sort of tell. But I mean, that seems to be a good way to do it, right?
it is.
Um,
I actually did it backwards. I mean, because I basically came up with the idea for the book because of my work, and then I was like,
and
oh
then broke
damn,
it down to streams. Yeah.
yeah, I'd better come up with a social media presence and streams and blog posts. So I sort of did it backwards. It's definitely kind of better if you start out being some kind of influencer and then go to being a book. But again, the truth
Fabio,
is about. Sorry.
sorry. I was just saying, Fabio has a question here. Sorry to have interrupted you, but
Okay.
in my question, we struggle every day with the data protection officer because of the difference between anonymized and pseudonymized data, which are still considered PII. So, actually, before you answer, maybe I should
Yeah.
make you define some words here: PII, pseudonymized.
Yeah, well, PII, of course, means personally identifiable information, which is typically construed to be anything that you could use to identify someone as an individual, meaning, like, obviously the name and phone number are considered, or email address are PII. But it depends, things like the city that you live in can also be considered PII. Because let's say you live in a town of 20 people, right? Then all of a sudden your city pretty nearly identical. It's also how you can combine it. if you live in a town of 20 people and they know your age and gender, they probably have a pretty good idea. If someone wanted to, they could de-anonymize you. And now let's see. Anonymized usually just means that you leave out all the PII fields. So, for example, you use an ID. It doesn't matter. I mean, the thing is, every customer has an ID in the database. It could be an integer or an alphanumeric string, depending on your database backend. So typically, you just use that to identify the individual. I'm actually not sure about what Fabio meant by pseudo-anonymized data, which are still considered
I
PII.
do.
Okay.
All right. So GDPR makes a clear difference between this, right? So these are European privacy rules. Anonymized means you've taken out enough of that information, PII or stuff that mentions the PII, that not only does it not say who the user is, you can't figure out who the user is anymore. The pseudonymized means you've taken out enough of the info that someone sort of looking at it can't figure out who it is. But you can see the identifiers and stuff and go back to your other databases and figure out who it is. So even though it's not obvious, you can go backwards because there's that customer ID, and the customer ID in the other database has the email. So it's not really anonymized.
Yeah. Well, that's definitely an internal problem in some companies. And as startups like OfferFit, where we work with third parties on their data, we just draw a line and say, we don't want to see a name or an email or a phone number anywhere in the feed that you give us, because then we don't have to worry about it anymore. Although we do still have to be sensitive, again, about things like address fields. Zip codes, I think, are not technically considered PII, but you can get into a lot of other trouble with zip codes about bias coming into your algorithms, which is another big area of concern for everyone nowadays, that we don't want our AI algorithms to have a bias which is either illegal or just simply unethical. And zip codes can very quickly get you into that territory.
Yeah, and some of those researchers at Google did some interesting research about how almost impossible it is to avoid not biasing your AIs if you fed them on real world data, because so much is biased in the real world. So Google fired all of them. Turns out there are some things you don't say.
And it's also true that a lot of this data can be, if you're determined, a lot of it can be used to determine the identity too. Like, I think someone showed that with the anonymous data on a phone, you can figure out who the person is just by, if you know what region they're in and you know all the apps they have. It seems anonymous, but actually how many people are in your zip code with all the apps that you've downloaded and all those things. And they showed that actually it determines a malicious person could work from that data.
Yeah, there's that fingerprinting ID. That you take enough of those things and you put together, you make a digital fingerprint for the person.
Exactly. That it'll be unique to you. Like, although, I mean, it's kind of, I don't know. I mean, it's hard to see who has access to that. I mean, I don't feel like I ever have that kind of access from the data that we work with. I look at things like, oh, you log in 20 times a month and, you're on the high value plan. And, then it's like, I have no idea. I don't have the hacking skills to figure out that kind of thing. But I guess there are, experts out there who could.
Yeah, and I think the browsers are getting better and better about cutting things back. But you look at like what version of the browser is the person running, what operating system are they running, how large is their screen, and things that seem like not very personal at all. But you start putting it together, right? And for the people in the small towns, it really is enough. So, all right. Raul is asking about your book. Who should be the ideal reader? Like a complete new to data science or some intermediate level?
Well, I really wrote the book for someone who's completely new at data science so that they could, make sense of it. And that was at the advice of my publisher. When I first had the idea for writing the book, I thought I would write a really advanced book to impress my data science friends. But my publisher set me straight and was like, no, 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 you have to write a book for a very basic reader. Because why? Because there's more of them. So my publisher insisted that I start, at a really basic level. And also Manning Publications has a whole cognitive education, I don't even know what it is, strategy, or they basically have certain standards that you're supposed to follow to make sure that it's understandable to people. Now that said, so I do think you could use my book literally as a first data science course. It would be a first data science course devoted to churn. You do need to know how to program Python and SQL. I can't teach you those before you start, but if you already know Python and SQL, my book will literally serve as a first data science course from start to end. Now,
I was going to say, you definitely assume people know SQL. And
yeah,
I thought
definitely.
I knew SQL, and I learned a few things, actually. You have some crazy queries as we get deeper and deeper into the book. But that's good. It's good. I learned.
Yeah, a lot of people in the field, a lot of people who are in my field do. It is a good practice to take full advantage of SQL because there's so much stuff that people, be honest, a lot of people do in Python pandas that they should really be doing in SQL. And people find that out when your data set gets bigger than around 500,000 rows. Like you're all good in Python pandas with 10,000, 20,000, 100,000. And then once you're getting close to a million, you're like, holy crap, pandas is not it's not a high performance big data processing tool. But yeah, so definitely SQL. A lot of people like techniques like that nowadays in the field, and it's much better than Python. And about experience, I do have to admit that if you do have data science experience, you'll probably get more from the book. Because you won't be struggling to get the basics, and you'll kind of pick up the finer points which are specific to churn, if you have some data science experience. And particularly in the later chapters, like on the chapter on machine learning, I give like a 2-paragraph introduction to like decision trees and gradient boosting, which are some of the state-of-the-art techniques, and then I just show you the Python and how to use it for churn. And if that was really your first introduction to those topics, it would be pretty tough. You'd have to take my word for it, for a lot of things that it would be good to, double check on.
Yeah. So do you only stream to Twitch when you stream, or do you stream other
Yeah,
places?
I have to get more on top of the restreaming. And also, actually, this got me to sign up for Restream. Also, someone needs to explain to me the latest on like Twitch and their policies, because I thought that there was some policy like Twitch wouldn't let me be an associate or something if I'm streaming on other platforms. So what I do right now is I just stream on Twitch, and then I put I put it on YouTube just as a video on demand.
Yeah. A lot of the stuff is, they won't pay you if you're not going exclusively to Twitch.
Oh, that's fine because they don't pay
Yeah.
me. I don't make money from my stream.
Yeah. I don't either. I don't care.
Yeah, it's not a big thing for me. I'm a full-time data scientist. I tell people who want to offer me subscriptions or bits or something, I'm like, really save your money. I don't deserve it. I'm not the highest paid data scientist in Silicon Valley, that's for sure. I don't work for Google or anything like that, but I'm doing okay.
Right. So audience interactions, like, do you ever learn anything from the audience? Do you get questions that you realize
Yeah,
you should have covered?
definitely get good questions. Midstream for things I haven't thought of or just clarifications. I do answer a lot of basic stuff sometimes. Like, at the beginning of every stream, I try to explain what churn is, but I don't want to spend too much time on it because I know that anyone who's watched my stream before would find that boring. But I have to put a little bit in. But it's inevitable that like 3/4 of the way through a stream, someone will just be like, "Hi, I'm new here. What's churn?" And I'm like, "Oh God, I better answer that quickly."
All right. So here is a big question. Question for both of you. Data science has too many concepts and new information research is added pretty often. But if you guys have to use the 80-20 rule to understand concepts and get your foot in a job, what would you guys do?
What are the core the 20% of data science that you should learn to get started with? Probably a good use of the Python kind of standards, sklearn. And the thing is, the problem with data science now is you even need to specialize what type of data science. All my work on Churn and also at OfferFit, we fall into the realm of what we call like structured data, which basically means tabular data about typically about customers. You have one row per customer or something like that in your data file. Now, that's one field of data science. And if you want to get going in that, I would say you really need to learn gradient boosting, because that's the most common, data science machine learning technique that we use nowadays for structured data. On the other hand, if you're interested in language processing, well, everyone knows nowadays, chat GPT, transformer models, those are the big thing in language processing, and it's completely different. So it's definitely for data science, you need to kind of pick a field. And I give this advice to people on their resumes too. Like, when you apply for a data science job, you want to know what type of data science, which is basically either vision, language processing, or structured data. Audio processing is less common as well. It's similar to image processing. So you kind of have to figure out which field you're trying to get into, and then don't make your resume be like a generalist resume showing I know a little bit from each category. You want to show strength in the category that particular job opening is for. So if it's an NLP job, you want to show that you know about chat GPT and the latest transformers. If it's a structured data job, don't tell me about your chat GPT experience. I want to see gradient boosting. And if it's images, you want to show experience with one of the deep learning frameworks, PyTorch or TensorFlow. So you really do have to be specific and then find that maybe that's a big part of finding the 20% rather than the 80% is just focusing on one area. Hope that kind of answers the question. I probably talked for too long, but
So I don't pretend to be a data scientist. I just, been trying to keep up to have some idea what people are talking about. One thing I did that was super helpful was I took an online class on statistics. All the data scientists don't even mention it because it's just assumed that you understand standard deviation and bimodal. So to start, if you don't know any statistics and somehow,
that is a really good point.
I have a degree in computer science, and we never touched statistics somehow.
And
I took all these math classes, and wasn't any.
Let me go a little bit deeper on that, specifically to learn regression, which is often taught not in a statistics class, but maybe an econometrics class. And I am actually guilty. I started studying machine learning and neural networks a long time ago. I mean, my story is I started studying it before it was popular. I think I took my first machine learning course in 1999. So really dating myself. But I also made the mistake of I dove right into neural networks, and I was like, wow, neural networks are so cool. But I never actually learned regression until later on. It was kind of like, oh, wow, I really should have learned this first, because so much is based on that classical regression model as just like a benchmark, for things.
Right. Yeah. So I think some of those basics, before you get into the really high tech stuff, have some idea what you're even trying to accomplish.
Yeah. So our list so far was basic statistics, including econometrics, the basic Python packages like sklearn, and then getting into whatever particular type of data science you need to focus on, like structured data, language processing, or vision.
All right. And he says, oh, that explains it well. Thank you for your thoughtful answer. All right. Good. Hopefully we were helpful.
Yep.
All right. Brian Purdell says, is there any new relational DB tech that you're excited about?
I am excited not about a particular technology, but about the whole trend of what's called the data lakehouse. Have you guys heard that term? You've
I've heard
probably
of a
heard of
data lake.
Yeah, you probably heard of
Not the house.
a data warehouse, and a data lake, right? So a data lake house is, well, and first to define those two, a data warehouse stores large amounts of structured data, usually things like sales data or event data, just in big tables of events. And it's very structured, table oriented. And then a data lake is unstructured. It can include just random stuff that's not in a proper schema or JSON or text. And the data lake house is what you can now do with technologies like Snowflake, or at my current company, OfferFit, we're on Google, so we use Google BigQuery, which can do a lot of these things, where you have the relational stuff of your data warehouse, but you also have support for unstructured data, and you can actually do all your data processing in the data lakehouse. Like they used to say, ETL, right? I'm going to get it wrong, but the old school is ETL. Extract, transform, then load. The new paradigm is ELT. Extract, load first, and then transform. Because you can use the power of your whatever your big data platform is to do the transforms after you've loaded it, potentially with some fields in JSON, or blobs or things like that. So definitely, I'm going to get it wrong again. ELT is the new way. And I've done this on Snowflake and, BigQuery, and I forget on
Athena?
AWS. Yeah, I think on AWS you would use
Athena?
Yeah, which is Presto, managed Presto. So these are all just distributed big data things, so you don't have to really worry about how big your data is.
Don't forget about reverse ETL too, putting stuff back into production systems like Salesforce.
Yep. It always has to go
now
back
our
to
data pipeline is a circle.
Yep, and it always has to get back to Salesforce somehow, or or they won't be able to use it.
So your setup for streaming, like what software do you use? What kind of microphone do you use?
Yeah, I'm not that great. I'm honestly not super advanced in my streaming. I use Streamlabs OBS, which I think is still kind of standard. And I just have a Logitech camera. What is this? A HyperX solo mic. And I'll actually be honest, I waited too long to invest in my streaming setup. That was actually, I think, a mistake I made, because I started out when I was just like, oh, I'll just start streaming. I'll see how it goes. I don't want to spend any money on it because I don't know if I'm going to, do it that much. But now the result is that some of my oldest streams, which were pretty good otherwise, they have terrible sound quality.
Yeah, sound quality, it's more important than video quality, right?
Yeah. I think I should have invested in the mic first, even if I wasn't sure how much streaming I was going to do. If I could give my past self that advice, I would say, go ahead, get that mic,
Yeah, I think that's right. I think if you're only going to buy one thing, buy a microphone.
Yeah. But I stream on a Mac too, which I think is also something of a disadvantage. I mean, most people, I assume, are on Windows, like a gamer.
Yeah, I'm on a Mac here. But...
Oh, you are? Okay. Yeah. So I'm not the only one.
Yeah. Ecamm is pretty nice as far as Mac software for doing a lot of the same stuff that OBS does. It's not free, but they've really made Mac software for streaming. It's pretty nice.
Okay. Yeah, I'm still on the free version, because as I mentioned, yeah, I mean, my main occupation is not being a streamer. It's being a manager of a machine learning engineering team. So
that's right. Yeah, so Maddie's saying that being on a Mac used to be a disadvantage, but with the M1 and M2 chips, they're more than powerful enough. Yeah, so I'm on an M1 Mac here, and it is plenty powerful enough.
I'm still on an Intel. Yeah.
Right,
I'm planning to upgrade. The upgrade is coming, any day now.
All right, cool. So yeah, I mean, I think you guys have figured it out. We're live. So if you have questions for Carl, ask them. I'm on Intel MacBook Pro, so I use it. Egg poo. Levels of playing field too. What's it? Oh, an eGPU.
eGPU.
External GPU. Is that what he's?
I'm not sure, actually. Yeah.
All right.
Again, I technology, it's so broad nowadays. It's hard to keep up with everything.
Oh, Mastodon. We hadn't talked about talking about this.
Oh, sure, yeah.
I see you're on it, and that's how this happened. I joined Mastodon, then like a couple days later, you joined Mastodon. It's like, holy cow, I know that guy.
Yeah. Yeah, well, I've been getting on Mastodon. I mean, like many people, I have some concern about, the direction at Twitter. Particularly back in December. That was when like everything was going crazy there. And then it seemed like a crisis to get off of Twitter and, get on to something else. It seems to have stabilized at Twitter, but I still actually appreciate Mastodon. And so now I'm just using both. I mean, really, which is like more bifurcation of the social media world. But yeah, Mastodon ends up being a lot more because what the difference that I can tell is you don't have an algorithm that's picking the top stories for you. You kind of just get this raw, uncensored feed of what everyone you follow is posting, which is both good and bad. I mean, this is my experience of Mastodon, is that sometimes you're like, what is all this random stuff? Like, where are the important, where are the top posts, and you have to like, so it's kind of good and bad. You get sort of an unfiltered, low key, timeline, which I think is good.
All right. Brian says that following hashtags in Mastodon is so nice.
Yeah, it's pretty much what you have to do because you don't have that algorithm that's like picking, the most popular posts to put in front of you. But it's more egalitarian then because, people who pay for a blue check or have a lot of followers in Mastodon, they don't get pushed up to the top.
Yeah. Another thing that's amusing me, and might amuse like you and Brian, but probably not for the mass audience, is how much innovation is going on. Like I have 6 different Mastodon apps right now on my phone, and they're all different. It feels like the web in 1995, right? When like there were new browsers and
there were actually
sites every day, like there are new websites every day, and you're like, wow, I didn't know you could do that on the web. So it feels like there's just so much innovation right now.
And in the long term, that's so important, especially as it's open source, and it can. Well, I mean, it seems like it still has some catching up to do to be polished. Obviously, like Twitter or Instagram or something. But the power of open source is behind it.
You can edit your toots, so in a very important way, it's well ahead of Twitter, right? So
well, yeah, don't you get that with your blue check? Now, I haven't signed up for the blue check on Twitter. I'm actually still waiting to see like what everyone else does. If everyone I follow ends up with a blue check, I'll go with the crowd and get a blue check. But I'm a little bit waiting to see.
Peer pressure.
Yeah, it's the peer pressure. I know that's what Elon Musk is hoping for, that we'll all get peer pressured into the blue check. So
I flipped in my mind that like I now basically think of Mastodon as a real one, and then I pop over to Twitter every once in a while to make sure I'm not missing out on stuff on the crappy old network.
Yeah.
So in my head, I've made that switch, and I know a lot of people haven't. But
I personally spend more time scrolling through Mastodon and actually like reading stuff, and I now see Twitter as kind of like, I turn it on to post an update or share something, and then I'll come back to see reactions to my post. But I'm not spending as much time just kind of like exploring on Twitter. My exploration is more focused on Mastodon at the moment.
Yeah. Cool. So what's next for you?
Well, the main thing for me, of course, is my day job at OfferFit. Right. Because, if you're in a startup, you got to be all the way in. It does take, long hours and, but we're also really doing cool new technology. I mean, because it really is taking the fight against churn to like the next level. And that was why I was so excited to join, because they were already building a platform which allowed you to take that kind of churn analysis and turn it into AI driven actions. So for me,
So
definitely,
who should consider hiring OfferFit?
you need to have a large customer base to make it worth it, because the basic, I won't throw numbers out there, but the basic package of an OfferFit use case is pretty expensive. So you actually have to be able to reap that reward by, you might get like 20 or 30% uplift in a typical OfferFit use case in whatever your customer life cycle goal is. You'll probably get 20%, 30% uplift, but that has to be worth real dollars and cents to you, because OfferFit is currently not cheap. In the future, it'll probably have more like a self-serve option, which will be less expensive, but we're not there yet. Mm-hmm. So it's mostly for big companies, is what I'm trying to say.
So yeah, big companies with subscriptions, right? Or is it
not
any sort of e-commerce?
Any sort of customer life cycle scenario, which could be we're doing use cases around purchases for like a retail app. Another use case is with I can't name all the names, but with a well-known internet platform about just increasing their their customer response to online messaging. Like they want to give people messages that actually encourage them to interact rather than encourage them to turn off notifications. So definitely subscription is like the bread and butter, because it's always easy to know that you've got a customer, all that event tracking is going to be enabled by default. And so the standard use cases are you've got a customer and you want to make sure they renew to a better plan or upsell, cross-sell. But we also are working with retail and what you would also call like lead acquisition stage, where, you've got people who are not even customers yet. Yeah, we're about to do a use case. We're doing use cases with actually multiple companies for what they call abandoned carts, where we're doing this with an airline. I can't name the name, and also pet insurance. Again, can't name the name, but you go to this airline and also a major hotel company, all similar cart abandonment use cases where you signed up, you almost made it to checkout, and then you disappeared. And they want to send you those messages. Oh, don't forget your abandoned cart. Do you still want to take your trip to Jamaica or whatever it is,
Yeah. That kind of stuff. It's both closed me before and creeped me out, right?
Yeah, it's all those things. I mean, I have mixed feelings about it too. I mean, because it is just marketing, encouraging people to buy stuff. But, there's the positive angle of it, which if you actually get people useful information that helps them make a purchase that they actually wanted, and it's not coercive or tricking people in any way, then you've actually helped someone out.
That's right. So Maddie asks, so every business has churn? You acquire a customer, they buy once, never again. Is that a churn?
Well, every business that wants to have a recurring revenue relationship. Now, is that every business? Nowadays, it probably is. Like almost every online business wants to have a recurring relationship with the customer, even if it's retail purchases. So I actually make the joke. I mean, I say every company today has a churn problem, even if they're not subscription, because every company wants the customer to keep coming back. And it also goes for streams and channels, and all the different media platforms. Although you don't generally have the data necessary to, to fight churn on a streaming platform. But yeah, pretty much every company that wants the customer to come back again, you can view that as a churn problem.
All right. I guess we should have covered that at the very beginning of the stream.
Yeah, I guess so.
We're talking about churn the whole time. In conclusion, here's what we were talking about.
Yeah, I guess so. Yeah, it's one of my first things in one of my streams is always like the 3 minutes. What is churn? And yes, churn includes retail, because if they're going through your website, you know who they are. You want them to come back, right? if they don't come back, that's a churn. I mean, it's retail churn, which is harder because you don't have the clear churn signal of them hitting cancel button. They just kind of disappear, but still counts as churn.
That's right. All right, we are here at 5 o'clock.
Yeah, wow, that hour went by pretty quick.
Yeah, it did. All right, well, I'm going to say thank you, Carl. This was great, super educational.
Thanks.
And thank you to everybody who asked questions. This was great. Maddie, Raul, Brian Purdell, all great. Thank you guys for your questions. Any final thoughts before we go?
For me, no, I'm just really happy to be here. And you asked about what's next for me. I mean, there is more live streaming coming up for me. I've been quiet the past few months, but I'm just in like a preparation phase, preparing for a new series that'll be coming out in 2023.
All right. I'm excited to see it. Make sure you post on Mastodon about it.
All right, will do, of course.
All right. Thanks, Carl. Good night, everybody.
Thanks so much, Alex. Thank you, everyone who participated.